The marble felt cold even through the soles of my Italian leather pumps, though I suspected the chill came from somewhere deeper than the polished floor of the Signal Soul's lobby. I'd been standing here for 20 minutes, one hand resting protectively on the 8-month swell beneath my bespoke silk coat, the other clutching the slim leather portfolio that contained documents Kim Soo-hyun needed signed by midnight. The weight of the pregnancy pressed against my spine, a constant reminder that I was doing two impossible things at once: carrying the heir to Korea's most powerful underworld empire and pretending I was just another executive assistant handling after-hours business. My ankles had swollen inside the custom pumps hours ago. The heavy silk coat that normally draped elegantly now felt like armor I couldn't remove, hiding what needed to stay hidden for just a few more weeks. I'd stopped trying to deny how exhausted I was, how my body screamed for rest that my position couldn't afford. The transaction should have been simple: meet the client, exchange documents, return to the penthouse. I'd built my reputation on making the complicated look effortless, on being the secretary who never flinched when asked to handle Soo Hyun's delicate matters. But standing here now, my feet aching and my back burning, I felt every one of my limitations. Mallory? The voice sliced through the lobby's refined murmur like broken glass. I knew it instantly, would have recognized it in the middle of a crowded street, in my nightmares. I turned slowly, already bracing for what I'd see. Marcus Whitfield stood 15 feet away, his designer suit immaculate, his expression shifting from surprise to something uglier as his eyes traveled down my body. He'd always been handsome in that calculated way: sharp jawline, perfectly styled hair, the kind of smile that photographed well at charity galas. The two men flanking him wore similar suits, similar smirks, the kind of social climbers who measured worth in zeros and connections. My God. Marcus's mouth curved into something cruel. I almost didn't recognize you. My throat tightened. I hadn't seen him since the night he'd called me just a secretary and walked out of my apartment 18 months ago, hadn't wanted to see him, had carefully structured my life to avoid this exact moment. Marcus. I kept my voice level, which felt like a small victory. I didn't expect to see you here. Clearly. His gaze dropped to my stomach, lingered there with undisguised shock even though the coat hid most of it. Then his eyes traveled to my swollen ankles, my hand braced against my lower back. When did this happen? You look. He trailed off, and one of his friends finished the sentence with a low whistle. Different, man. She looks really different. Heat crawled up my neck. The lobby seemed to crystallize around us, other guests pausing in their elegant trajectories through the space. I became acutely aware of every person who might be watching Marcus Whitfield publicly assess his former girlfriend's body. I'm working. I shifted the portfolio in front of me like a shield. I should go. Working? Marcus laughed, the sound sharp enough to make heads turn. At this hour? Looking like that? He stepped closer, and I caught the expensive cologne he'd always worn, the scent mixing with champagne on his breath. Come on, Mallory, what happened? Last time I saw you, you were so put together, so careful about your appearance. You always said presentation was everything in your line of work. His friends moved in beside him, forming a loose semicircle that blocked my path to the elevators. One of them nudged Marcus, grinning. This is the girl you said was too ambitious? Looks like she's been eating her feelings, bro. I mean, I'm just concerned. Marcus arranged his features into false sympathy, the expression I'd once found charming before I learned what it concealed. You've gained weight, Mallory. A lot of it. What's your excuse? Stress eating because you're still just a secretary? Did you finally realize you were never going to climb higher than fetching coffee for powerful men? The words hit like physical blows. My hand tightened on the portfolio until my knuckles went white. I'm pregnant. The words came out harder than I intended. Oh. Marcus's eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. Well, that explains the ankles, and the— He gestured vaguely at all of me. Everything. Who's the father? Some middle manager? Please tell me you at least got a ring out of it before he knocked you up. His friends laughed, the sound bouncing off the marble walls. I tried to step around them, but Marcus moved to block me, his body casually occupying the space between me and escape. The pregnancy made me slower, off balance, and he knew it. I could see it in the way his smile widened, in the way he positioned himself just close enough to be intimidating without touching. Come on. Don't be like that. His voice dropped to a mockery of intimacy. I'm just shocked, that's all. You look ugly, Mallory. You used to be so beautiful, so careful. And now you're here, waddling around a five-star hotel, probably hoping to meet some rich businessman who'll take pity on you. It's honestly kind of sad. The lobby air felt too thin. My vision tunneled to Marcus's face, to the satisfaction gleaming in his eyes, to the realization that he thought he'd won something by finding me like this. Swollen, exhausted, alone. Then I heard it. The distinctive chime of the executive elevator, the one that required a key card to access. The doors opened behind Marcus with a whisper of expensive machinery, and Kim Soo-hyun stepped out. The ride to Soo-hyun's private estate in Pyeongchang-dong passed in silence, broken only by the whisper of the Maybach's tires on wet pavement. I sat in the back seat beside him, my hands still trembling from what had happened in the lobby. Marcus had been forced to his knees on that cold marble floor, his face white with terror as Soo-hyun's security detail surrounded him. The apology had been extracted with surgical precision, each word dragged from Marcus's throat like broken glass. I'd watched it happen through a fog of shock, unable to reconcile the man who'd mocked my swollen ankles with the one sobbing against designer marble. Soo-hyun hadn't said a word since we'd left the hotel. His hand rested on the seat between us, close enough that I could feel its warmth, but he didn't touch me. The distance felt intentional, careful, as though he was giving me space to process what he'd just done on my behalf. The estate gates opened silently as we approached, revealing grounds that seemed to stretch endlessly into darkness. The house itself was modern and severe, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected nothing but night. Security personnel materialized from the shadows as the car stopped, their movements practiced and efficient. Come, Soo-hyun said quietly, the first word he'd spoken in 20 minutes. Inside the house was warmer than I expected, all pale wood and subtle lighting that felt designed to soothe rather than impress. He guided me to a sitting room where a fire had already been lit, where someone had already arranged cushions on the sofa in a way that would support my back. The attention to detail made my throat tight. Sit. It wasn't a command, despite the single word. He disappeared through a doorway and returned with a glass of water and a small plate of fruit. You didn't eat at the hotel. How did you know I'd be there? The question came out smaller than I intended. Marcus, I mean, how did you— I've known about Marcus Whitfield for 8 months. Soo-hyun settled into the chair across from me, his posture relaxed in a way that somehow made him more intimidating. Since the first week you came to work for me, I know everything about the people in your life. Mallory. It's how I keep you safe. The words should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something crack open inside my chest, some wall I'd been holding in place since the night Marcus had called me just a secretary and walked away. You've been watching him? Waiting. Soo-hyun's eyes met mine, dark and absolutely certain. Waiting for him to make the mistake of approaching you. Waiting for the right moment to show him exactly what you are to me. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. You are not just my secretary, Mallory. You carry my son. And no one speaks to the mother of my heir the way he did. The envelope arrived at my apartment 3 days later, slipped under the door while I was at work. I found it when I returned that evening, my feet aching from another 12-hour day of pretending my pregnancy wasn't reshaping every aspect of my existence. Plain Manila, no return address, my name printed in letters that looked like they'd been cut from a label maker. The kind of anonymity that screamed guilt. Inside were photographs, a dozen of them, printed on glossy paper that caught the light as I spread them across my kitchen table with shaking hands. Me and Soo Hyun leaving his office building at midnight. Me in the back of his car, his hand on my knee. Me entering his Pyeongchangdong estate, the security gates visible in the frame. The photographer had been patient, methodical, building a narrative across weeks of surveillance. The note was worse than the photos. Mallory, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I owe people money I don't have, and they're not the kind of people who accept payment plans. I need 500 million won by the end of the month, or these go to every major newspaper in Seoul. Secretary carries Korean mafia boss's baby. Can you imagine the headlines? What that would do to your reputation? What social services might think about a woman involved with organized crime trying to raise a child? You always said I was ambitious. Well, so are you. You climbed into a monster's bed to get ahead, and now you're going to pay for that choice, unless you'd rather I pay instead. Your call. Wire the money to the account number below. You have 1 week. After that, I start making calls. And Mallory? Don't tell your boss. Men like Kim Soo-hyun don't react well to threats. Things could get messy, and you're too pregnant to run if they do. M. I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper into my chest like stones into dark water. 500 million won, nearly $500,000. Money I'd never seen, never touched. Despite working at the right hand of one of Seoul's wealthiest men. Marcus knew that. He'd always known exactly where my vulnerabilities lay, had spent our entire relationship mapping them like a general studying terrain. The apartment felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. I thought about Soo Hyun's words at the estate. I know everything about the people in your life. It's how I keep you safe. But he didn't know about this. Couldn't know. Because Marcus was right about one thing. Men like Soo Hyun didn't negotiate with threats. They eliminated them, and I was 8 months pregnant with too much to lose. I didn't hear Soo Hyun enter my apartment, which meant he'd used the key I didn't know he had. I was sitting on the floor beside my coffee table, the photographs spread around me like evidence at a crime scene, mascara tracking down my cheeks in lines I'd stopped trying to wipe away. The note lay in my lap, Marcus's words blurring through my tears. Mallory. His voice was soft, but I heard the steel underneath it. What is this? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed around words that wouldn't come, around explanations that felt too complicated and too simple at once. Instead, I watched him crouch beside me, watched his eyes move across the photographs with an expression that started as confusion and hardened into something absolutely cold. He picked up the note, read it once, twice, then very carefully set it back on the table. How long have you had these? His voice hadn't changed, still soft, still controlled. Somehow that made it more terrifying. 3 hours. The words came out broken. I didn't know what to do. He wants money I don't have, and if I tell you, he'll what? Soo Hyun's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing away tears with surprising gentleness. Go to the press? Destroy your reputation? Threaten my child? He leaned closer, his eyes holding mine. Mallory, do you know what the Kim family does to people who threaten what belongs to us? I shook my head, afraid of the answer. We don't call the police. He released my face and stood, pulling his phone from his jacket with movements that seemed almost lazy. The police have procedures, laws, bureaucracy. They're useful for certain things, but not for this. Not for someone who thinks he can extort the mother of my heir and walk away breathing. He made a call, speaking rapid Korean I only partially understood. Names I didn't recognize. Instructions that sounded calm, businesslike, as though he was scheduling a meeting rather than, "What are you doing?" My voice cracked on the question. Soo Hyun ended the call and returned to me, kneeling again so we were eye level. "I'm handling this the Korean way, the Kim way. Marcus Whitfield made a choice when he sent these photographs. He declared himself an enemy of my family, a threat to my bloodline. In my world, there are consequences for that." Soo Hyun, you should have come to me immediately. His hand found mine, squeezed gently. "This is what I do, Mallory. I protect what's mine. And you." His other hand moved to rest against my swollen stomach. "And our son are mine." Marcus forgot that. He won't forget again. The Shilla Hotel ballroom glittered like something from a fever dream, all crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes catching light from 1,000 sources. I stood beside Soo Hyun near the entrance, my hand resting in the crook of his arm, wearing a custom emerald gown that had been delivered to my apartment that morning with a note in his handwriting, "Wear this. Trust me." The silk draped over my 8-month belly in a way that didn't hide it but somehow made it elegant, purposeful, impossible to ignore. "You don't have to do this," I whispered as we watched Seoul's elite filter past us, their eyes catching on my stomach, and then darting away with practiced discretion. "Yes, I do." Soo Hyun's voice was calm, absolute. "Marcus still has those photographs. He still thinks he has leverage. After tonight, he'll understand exactly how powerless he is." I'd argued with him for 2 days about this plan, about the wisdom of announcing our relationship at an event where half of Korea's political and business elite would be watching. He'd listened to every objection with infinite patience before explaining, again, that hiding only gave our enemies ammunition. Visibility was protection. Truth was armor. The ballroom quieted as Soo Hyun stepped toward the small stage where the evening's host had been making forgettable remarks about charitable giving. I watched him move through the crowd like water parting around stone, watched powerful men step aside without being asked, watched their wives track his progress with expressions I couldn't quite read. He took the microphone with the ease of someone who'd been commanding rooms since birth. "I apologize for the interruption," he said in Korean, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "But I have an announcement that cannot wait." His eyes found mine across the room, held them. "Many of you know me as a businessman, an investor, someone who prefers privacy to spectacle. Tonight, I'm setting that preference aside." He extended his hand toward me. I felt hundreds of eyes follow the gesture, felt the weight of their attention as I walked to join him on the stage. My gown, whispering against marble with each step. Soo Hyun's arm wrapped around my waist, his hand settling protectively over my stomach in a gesture so possessive that I heard someone gasp. "This is Mallory Bellery," he said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "My fiancée, the mother of my son, the next matriarch of the Kim family." He paused, letting the words settle like stones into deep water. "Anyone who disrespects her, threatens her, or attempts to use her for their own gain will answer directly to me." I wanted to be very clear about that. In the crowd, I found Marcus's face, white as bone, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his mouth. The surveillance started 2 days after the gala. Small things at first. A black sedan parked too long outside my apartment building, the same face appearing in 3 different coffee shops across a week. The feeling of being watched that I tried to dismiss as pregnancy paranoia until Soo Hyun's head of security appeared at my office door with an expression that made my blood run cold. "We need to move you," he said, without preamble. "Now." The penthouse in Gangnam became my prison within an hour. Beautiful, yes, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, and furniture that probably cost more than I'd earned in 5 years. But a prison nonetheless, complete with armed guards stationed at every entrance and security cameras covering every angle of approach. Soo Hyun arrived after midnight, his jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up in a way that meant the situation was worse than anyone had told me. "Who are they?" I asked before he could speak. "The Jong faction. Soul-based, ambitious, stupid." He moved to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, drank half before continuing. "They see your pregnancy as an opportunity. Kill the heir before he's born, destabilize my organization, move into territory we've held for 3 generations." The words hit like physical blows. I pressed both hands against my stomach, feeling the baby move beneath my palms, alive and vulnerable, and completely dependent on my ability to keep him safe. "They've been tracking you for a week," Soo Hyun continued, his voice flat with controlled rage. "Following your routes, timing your movements, looking for patterns. We caught 2 of their people yesterday. They talked eventually. The plan was to take you during your morning commute, use you as leverage to force concessions from me. And when you refused," my voice came out steadier than I felt, "they would have killed you both." He finished the whiskey, set the glass down with careful precision. "Made it look like an accident, a tragedy, something I couldn't retaliate against without looking unstable. It's a smart play, actually, if I weren't 10 steps ahead of them." I watched him move to the window, his reflection ghostly against the Seoul skyline. "How long do I have to stay here?" "Until the baby is born. Until you're strong enough to move freely again. Until I've eliminated every single person who thought threatening you was acceptable strategy." He turned to face me, his expression absolutely certain. "However long that takes, Mallory, however long you need." I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror 3 weeks into lockdown and barely recognized the woman staring back. My face had rounded, my cheeks fuller than they'd ever been. Dark circles stamped beneath eyes that looked perpetually exhausted. The silk nightgown Soo Hyun had bought me clung to a body that felt foreign: swollen breasts, distended belly, hips that had widened to accommodate the life growing inside me. Marcus's voice echoed in my head like poison. "You look ugly, Mallory." I pressed my palms against the cool marble counter, trying to steady my breathing. The baby kicked, a rolling movement that usually brought me joy, but tonight only reminded me of how much I'd changed, how much I'd lost of the woman who used to pride herself on control and presentation. "Mallory?" Soo Hyun's voice came through the door, concerned. "Are you all right?" I couldn't answer around the tightness in my throat. He entered without waiting for permission, found me crying silently against the sink, my shoulders shaking with the effort of keeping quiet. His reflection appeared behind mine in the mirror, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders with familiar warmth. "Talk to me," he said softly. "I'm useless to you like this." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "I can't work, can't go anywhere, can't even tie my own shoes without help. I'm nothing but a burden now. A fat, swollen burden who can't even protect herself, let alone your son. Stop." The word was gentle but absolute. His hands slid down my arms, pulling me back against his chest. "Look at yourself. Really look." I forced my eyes to the mirror, saw what he saw: bloated, tired, broken. "I see a woman carrying my child through a war zone," Soo Hyun said, his voice low and fierce. "I see someone who handles death threats with more grace than trained soldiers. I see the future mother of the Kim dynasty, the woman who will teach my son what real strength looks like. I'm not strong. I'm scared all the time." "Strength isn't the absence of fear, Mallory. It's moving forward despite it." His hand came to rest on my stomach, feeling the baby move beneath his palm. "Do you think I fell in love with your secretarial skills? Your ability to schedule meetings?" He turned me to face him, his eyes holding mine. "I fell in love with your spine, Your refusal to break. The way you looked at me the first day we met like you weren't afraid of what I was. I was terrified. I whispered. I know. But you didn't run. You never run. His thumb brushed away my tears. That's what makes you beautiful. The intel came through Soo Hyun's network 3 days before my due date, delivered by his head of security in a manila folder that made my stomach clench before I even knew what it contained. We were in the penthouse living room, late afternoon sun turning the Han River gold beyond the windows, when the man's expression told me everything had just changed. Soo Hyun read the contents in silence, his face settling into that mask of absolute calm that meant someone was about to die. He passed me a surveillance photograph without comment. Marcus, standing outside a warehouse in Incheon, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, but whose neck tattoos suggested exactly which organization he represented. The Jang faction. The same people who'd been hunting me for weeks. When? My voice came out steady despite the ice spreading through my chest. Yesterday. Soo Hyun's security chief spoke carefully, watching my face. We've had eyes on Whitfield since the blackmail attempt. He's been gambling heavily, lost everything in underground poker games in Ida 1. The loan sharks found him 2 weeks ago. He owes 30 million won to people who don't accept excuses. I stared at the photograph, at Marcus's face caught in profile, at the desperate set of his shoulders. What did he agree to? Floor plans of this building, security rotation schedules, your daily routine when you're most vulnerable. Soo Hyun's voice was clinical, detached, the tone he used when discussing business rather than betrayal. In exchange, the Jiang faction promised to clear his debt and pay him 10 million won on top. Enough to disappear, start over somewhere his creditors won't find him. He's going to help them kill me. The words felt surreal, spoken aloud in this beautiful room with its expensive furniture and bulletproof windows. Help them kill your son. He doesn't see it that way. The security chief pulled out another photograph, this one showing Marcus in what looked like a planning meeting, papers spread across a table. He convinced himself you're just collateral damage, that the Jang faction only wants leverage against Mr. Kim, that they'll negotiate rather than kill. He's lying to himself about what he's enabling. Soo Hyun stood and moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. When does he give them the information? Tomorrow night. The exchange is set for midnight at a warehouse near the port. And the attack? 48 hours after that, during your hospital transfer for delivery. The man's voice dropped. They know you're close to labor. They're planning to hit the ambulance en route to the medical center. I pressed both hands against my stomach, feeling the baby shift beneath my palms. Marcus had looked at me in that hotel lobby, called me ugly, mocked my swollen body. Now he was selling me to killers for the price of his gambling debts. The contractions started at 4 in the morning, pulling me from restless sleep with pain that stole my breath. I lay in the darkness of Soo Hyun's bedroom, counting seconds between waves, trying to remember the breathing exercises I'd practiced and abandoned as useless when the next contraction hit like a fist closing around my spine. Soo Hyun. My voice came out tight, strangled. He was awake instantly, his hand finding mine in the dark. How far apart? 5 minutes, maybe less. What happened next moved with practiced efficiency. Security personnel materializing in the hallway, the private medical team Soo Hyun had kept on retainer arriving within minutes, the armored SUV pulling into the building's underground garage. We were moving toward Asen Medical Center's private maternity ward within 20 minutes, surrounded by enough armed guards to invade a small country. I should have known it wouldn't be enough. The explosion came as we entered the hospital's underground parking garage, a percussion blast that rocked the SUV and sent security personnel scattering for cover. Through the tinted windows I saw muzzle flashes, heard the sharp crack of gunfire echoing off concrete walls. Go! Soo Hyun's voice cut through the chaos. Get her inside now. Hands. pulled me from the vehicle, half carrying me toward the service elevator as another contraction seized my body. I heard shouting in Korean, the controlled bursts of return fire from Soo-hyun's men, the screech of tires as more vehicles arrived. Someone was screaming. It took me a moment to realize it was me. The elevator doors closed on a scene from a war zone. Soo-hyun's security chief had his weapon drawn, his free hand supporting my weight as my legs threatened to give out. "6th floor, secure wing. They can't get to you there." "Soo-hyun?" I gasped between contractions. "He's handling it. Your job is to stay alive and have this baby." The secure wing was exactly what it sounded like. Reinforced doors, armed guards, doctors who looked unsurprised by the sound of gunfire 6 floors below. They got me into a delivery room, got monitors attached to my stomach, got an IV in my arm while I tried to focus on breathing through contractions that were coming faster now, harder, leaving no space to think about what was happening in the parking garage. "The baby's heart rate is elevated," a nurse said, her voice professionally calm. "We need to get her to delivery now." Through the door, I heard more gunfire, closer this time, shouts in Korean and English, the distinctive thud of boots on linoleum. "They're in the building," someone said. Another contraction hit, and I screamed into the chaos, my body determined to bring new life into a hospital under siege. I heard the silence before I heard Soo-hyun. The gunfire that had punctuated my labor for 3 hours simply stopped, leaving only the beeping of monitors and my own ragged breathing in the aftermath. The baby, our son, lay against my chest, impossibly small and perfect, his dark hair still damp, his eyes squeezed shut against the world he'd just entered. The delivery room door opened. Soo-hyun stood in the doorway, his white shirt streaked with blood that I knew wasn't his weapon still holstered at his hip. His eyes found mine first, then dropped to the bundle in my arms, and I watched something break open in his expression that I'd never seen before. "It's over," he said quietly, moving toward us with careful steps, as though afraid he might shatter the moment. "The Jang faction is finished. Every man they sent is either dead or in custody." He reached the bedside, his hand trembling slightly as it touched our son's head. "And Marcus, I don't want to know." The words came out firmer than I expected. "Whatever you did, whatever happened to him, I don't want to know." Soo-hyun nodded once, accepting this. His fingers traced the baby's tiny hand, watched those impossibly small fingers curl reflexively around his thumb. "He's perfect. You're perfect. I'm a mess." But I smiled as I said it, looking down at the baby who'd somehow survived a siege to be born. "We both are. You're the mother of my heir." Soo-hyun sat on the edge of the bed, his arm coming around my shoulders. "The woman who went into labor during a war and still brought my son into the world breathing. Do you understand what that makes you in my world, Mallory?" I thought about Marcus in that hotel lobby, calling me ugly, treating me like I was nothing. I thought about the months of hiding, of fear, of feeling powerless against forces I couldn't control. I looked at the baby in my arms, at Soo-hyun beside me, at the armed guards visible through the doorway who would die before they let anyone threaten us. "Powerful," I whispered. "Untouchable." He pressed his lips to my temple. "Every organization in Seoul will know by morning that you survived an attack on the day you gave birth. They'll know I burned the Jang faction to the ground for threatening you. They'll know that anyone who looks at you wrong, speaks to you wrong, thinks about harming you, answers to me." The baby stirred against my chest, made a small sound of protest. "What will we call him?" I asked. "Heir," Soo-hyun said simply. "King, the beginning of everything." His hand covered mine where it rested on our son's back. "But his mother will call exactly what she is. Queen. Thank you for staying until the end. That means more than you think." If this story touched something inside you, subscribe, like, and tell me what you felt in the comments. I read every single one because this isn't just storytelling, it's connection. And if you're ready for the next journey, don't wander too far. The next story is already waiting in the dark.